Most grass seed failures happen before the seed ever touches the ground. The conventional approach, spread seed, water daily, wait 2 to 3 weeks, gives the seed no advantage going into the soil. It lands dry, it sits dormant, and it depends entirely on surface moisture staying consistent for long enough that germination can start from scratch. That rarely happens reliably in a residential yard, which is why so many seeding projects come in thin or patchy even when the seed quality is good and the prep work was done correctly. There is a method called pre-germination that changes the starting point entirely. Instead of putting dormant seed into the ground and hoping conditions hold, you start the germination process before the seed goes in. The seed goes into the soil already activated, already past the most vulnerable stage, and it can establish visible growth in as little as 24 hours after planting. This covers how pre-germination works biologically, how to do it with equipment most people already have at home, and the one timing detail that determines whether the method works or fails completely. Before we get into it, if you want a full system for managing your lawn at a fraction of what most homeowners spend, the book linked in the description and pinned in the comments has saved our readers an average of $2,000 a year in lawn care costs. Every video on this channel is built around spending less and getting better results. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Grass seed does not germinate the moment it hits moist soil. There is a biological process that has to complete first, and that process takes time even under ideal conditions. The outer seed coat has to absorb enough water to soften. Enzymes inside the seed have to activate. The embryo has to begin cellular division before a root tip can emerge. Under the best possible surface conditions, that process takes anywhere from 5 to 21 days depending on grass species. Cool season grasses like tall fescue and Kentucky bluegrass sit toward the longer end of that range. Perennial ryegrass is on the faster end at 5 to 7 days under ideal conditions. The problem is that surface conditions in a residential yard are almost never ideal for the full duration of that window. Soil dries out in the top quarter inch within hours of watering on a warm day. Wind accelerates that drying. Rain events can be too intense and wash seed or cause brief waterlogging that suffocates emerging roots. Foot traffic compacts the surface. Birds and insects remove seed. Every day the seed sits dormant on or near the surface is another day it is exposed to all of those variables without any protection. University turfgrass extension research from institutions including Penn State and North Carolina State has consistently shown that germination rates under standard broadcast seeding conditions in residential settings are significantly lower than what the seed bag specifications list, because those specifications are measured under controlled conditions that do not replicate a backyard in September. Pre-germination addresses the root cause of those failures by getting the seed through its most vulnerable stage before it ever enters the ground. When a grass seed absorbs water continuously for a sustained period, it crosses a threshold called imbibition, which is the technical term for the initial water uptake phase of germination. Once a seed has fully imbibed, the enzymatic processes inside it activate and cellular metabolism begins. The seed is no longer dormant. It is alive and actively working toward producing a root tip. That root tip, called a radicle, is the first visible sign of germination and the point at which the seedling can begin anchoring itself in soil and drawing in nutrients. Pre-germination holds the seed in water long enough to bring it to or just past the imbibition threshold before it goes into the ground. The seed goes into the soil already metabolically active. It does not need to spend 5 to 14 days absorbing moisture and waiting for enzymatic activation to begin. That process is already done. What remains is root establishment and blade emergence, which happens significantly faster when starting from an activated seed than from a dormant one. Research from turfgrass programs at multiple land-grant universities has shown germination speed improvements of 30 to 50% using pre-soaked seed compared to dry seed under equivalent field conditions. The other advantage is germination rate. Seed that has been continuously hydrated through the imbibition phase has a higher percentage of seeds that successfully activate compared to seed that alternates between wet and dry conditions on the soil surface. More of what you plant actually grows. The competitor version of this method uses paint strainer bags ordered from Amazon fitted over a 5-gallon bucket. That works well, but it is not the only way to do this, and it is not necessarily the cheapest. Here are 3 options at different price points that all accomplish the same thing. The first option uses a mesh laundry bag, the kind sold in dollar stores for washing delicate clothing. A small mesh laundry bag costs between $1 and $2 at Dollar Tree or Dollar General. It holds seed securely, allows water to move freely through the mesh, and can be closed with the drawstring. Drop it into any bucket you have at home, fill the bucket with water, weigh the bag down if it floats, and the setup is complete. Total cost is $1 to $2 if you do not already own a mesh bag, and $0 if you do. The second option is the paint strainer bag method from the competitor video, which costs roughly $8 to $12 for a pack of 10 bags on Amazon. The bags are reusable, they fit snugly over a 5-gallon bucket rim, and they make it easy to dunk the bag repeatedly without removing it from the bucket. If you plan to do multiple seeding projects or a large seeding area over multiple seasons, having a supply of these on hand is worth it. For a single project, the mesh laundry bag does the same job at a fraction of the cost. The third option, which costs nothing and works for very small seeding areas, is a clean cotton pillowcase tied at the open end. Cotton allows water movement, holds seed without letting it escape through gaps, and can be weighted down in a bucket with a rock or a brick. This is the $0 version of the method, and it is functionally equivalent for small quantities of seed. On the seed itself, pre-germination works with uncoated, untreated grass seed. Coated seed, which is often blue or green in color and marketed as requiring less watering, has a polymer coating that controls the rate of moisture absorption. That coating interferes with the pre-germination process because it slows or prevents the continuous water uptake needed to reach imbibition. Any bag that mentions coating, reduced watering needs, or shows seed that is clearly a uniform color other than the natural tan or brown of uncoated seed should be set aside for conventional seeding. Standard uncoated seed from brands like Jonathan Green, Pennington Pure Seed, or Scott's Turf Builder with no coating are appropriate for this method. If this is the kind of content you have been looking for, practical and grounded in how things actually work, this channel puts out videos like this regularly. Subscribe before you forget, and the next one comes straight to you. Place your seed into the mesh bag, laundry bag, or tied pillowcase. The quantity depends on the area you are seeding. Use the same seeding rate recommended on the bag for the area you are covering. Put the bag into a bucket, and fill the bucket with enough water to fully submerge the bag. If the bag floats, weigh it down with a rock or a brick. The seed needs to stay submerged continuously. Leave it for the first 24 hours without disturbing it. After 24 hours, lift the bag out, let it drain for a minute, then submerge it again. Continue this dunking process every 12 hours. Change the water if it becomes noticeably cloudy or foul-smelling, which is a sign of bacterial buildup that can reduce germination rates. The process continues until you see the first signs of radical emergence, which looks like tiny white thread-like tips beginning to push out from the seed coat. This typically happens between 24 and 72 hours for perennial ryegrass, between 48 and 96 hours for tall fescue, and may take up to 5 days for Kentucky bluegrass, which is naturally slower to germinate regardless of method. Once radicals are visible, the window for planting is short. The seed needs to go into the ground within a few hours of the radical becoming clearly visible. If you wait too long, the roots continue growing and become tangled with each other, and with the bag material, which makes it impossible to separate and spread the seed without damaging the emerging root structure. Wet germinated seed clumps together and does not spread the same way dry seed does. To get even distribution, mix the wet seed with dry material that will help break the clumps apart and allow it to flow more freely. Dry compost, dry soil, or sand all work for this. Mix it in a wheelbarrow or a tray until the seed is distributed evenly through the carrier material, then spread by hand or by broadcaster depending on your area size. The goal is even coverage without gaps. Once spread, press the seed lightly into the soil surface with a lawn roller or by walking the area. Germinated seed needs soil contact to establish. Seed sitting on top of loose material without contact will dry out and fail even at this late stage. Water lightly immediately after seeding and keep the surface consistently moist for the first week. Under good conditions, pre-germinated perennial ryegrass can show visible blade emergence within 24 to 48 hours of planting. Tall fescue typically shows within 3 to 5 days. Kentucky bluegrass takes longer regardless of method, but pre-germination still reduces the total time to establishment compared to dry seeding by a measurable margin. By the end of the first week, an area seeded with properly timed pre-germinated seed should show significantly more coverage than an equivalent area seeded with dry seed at the same time. The most common mistake is missing the timing window. Planting too early, before any radical emergence, reduces the advantage but does not eliminate it. Planting too late, after the roots have grown long enough to tangle and the seed is no longer separable, ruins the project entirely. Check the bag every 12 hours once you are past the 48-hour mark, and be ready to plant as soon as you see the first white tips appearing. The second most common mistake is letting the surface dry out after planting. Pre-germinated seed is more vulnerable to drying than dormant seed, because the metabolic processes inside it are already running and require continuous moisture to sustain. Light, frequent watering for the first 5 to 7 days after planting is more important with pre-germinated seed than with conventional seeding. The third mistake is using coated seed. If the bag description mentions any coating or the seed is a uniform color that does not match natural grass seed, it is not appropriate for this method. Pre-germination is not complicated and it does not require specialized equipment. A mesh laundry bag from the dollar store and a bucket you already own is enough to do this correctly. The biology behind it is straightforward. Seed that has already completed the imbibition phase and started radicle development establishes faster and at a higher rate than dormant seed placed in variable surface conditions. For anyone who has tried conventional seeding and come up with thin or patchy results, this method addresses the most common cause of those failures before the seed ever hits the ground.